What is it that makes people actually listen when someone speaks? I asked myself that question years ago, watching a session of Congress in my country. Several women legislators were presenting, prepared, articulate, with well built arguments, and still the room wasn't fully with them. People were whispering, shuffling papers, typing. Not out of bad intention, I think, but simply because their attention drifted. And watching that moment, something became very clear to me. Being listened is not automatic, it is a skill, a craft, a set of signals, verbal and nonverbal, that tell the brain, hey, this matters, stay here. And that is exactly what this episode is about. If episode one explored the experience of not being heard, episode two is the practical side, how to speak so people actually listen, how to guide attention, how to create presence, how to make your message land, not by speaking louder, not by pushing, but by using simple, intentional techniques that work in any room, diplomatic, professional, or personal. So let's get into it. I am Angelica Gutierrez. Most people call me Angie. I am a lawyer, a political scientist, and for the past 15 years, I have worked in diplomacy, gender equality, and international negotiations across Africa and Latin America. And this is the Warm Talks, a space for honest, practical conversations about voice, leadership, and the realities we face as women in professional spaces. My goal here is simple: to help you speak with clarity, presence, and intention without losing who you are. So, why people tune out? Before we talk technique, we need to understand something very simple. People don't listen automatically. People listen when the brain decides, hey, this matters. And that decision happens fast, sometimes in like seconds. There are three reasons why attention disappears, and none of them mean that you are doing something wrong. The first one is cognitive load. When the brain feels overwhelmed, too many ideas, too much information, too many words at once, it quietly disconnects. And this happens everywhere, at work, in school meetings, even at home. Let me show you a simple example. The first example is an overload version. The second example is a straightforward version. So the overload version sounds like, okay, here is the update. The team sent the draft, the consultant added comments. Now the timeline changed again. Finance has questions, and I'm not even sure legal reviewed the last version. Most people will tune out in this example in the first 10 seconds. But if you reduce the load, the brain stays with you. Here is the optimized, straightforward version. Here is the update in one sentence. The timeline changed, and we need one decision to move forward. In this example, the person instantly knows, this is clear. I can follow. And when I shared these two examples in one of my trainings, a student asked me, hey, Angelica, but with the straightforward version, aren't we losing a lot of information? And I told her, we are not removing information, we are sequencing it. The straightforward optimized version opens the door to a clearer conversation. You always can add details later, but you don't start with 10 ideas competing over space. You start with one clear line so the other person can actually follow you. Now, the second reason people tune out is something we all feel but rarely name, and it's called status cues. Every room has an invisible hierarchy: who people expect to lead, who they expect to follow, who gets interrupted, who receives instant attention. And this hierarchy is not always based on experience or on expertise. Sometimes it reflects gender, sometimes it reflects seniority, power dynamics, confidence, unconscious bias. Research shows that women are interrupted more, questioned more, and often need to demonstrate expertise before they are taken seriously. This is not personal, it is structural. But here is the part that matters for you. You do not need to be the most senior person in the room to influence how people listen to you. You can shift perception through early clarity and intentional voice signals. Let me show you what that looks like. If you start with something like soft, oh, I just wanted to add a quick point. You unintentionally are telling the room that your contribution is optional. But if you begin with direction, even in a calm tone, you shift automatically the dynamic. For example, let me clarify one point before we continue. Or, there are two elements we need to align on. You're not taking over the meeting, you're not being aggressive, you're giving structure. And rooms instinctively follow structure. Now, let us talk about voice, because voice is a status cue. One of the most powerful ways to sound clear and confident is to end your sentence with a downward tone, not an upward tone. What does this mean? When you raise your tone at the end of the sentence, even slightly, it sounds as if you are asking for permission or checking for approval. So, one example of rising your tone. There is one point I want to clarify. This sounds like a question, even though it is not. So, you have to downward your tone. This will make you sound clear and confident. There is one point I want to clarify. This sounds like an intentional statement, a downward tone signals. This thought is complete. It helps people process your idea without wondering if you are unsure. Now, what can you do if you're not the leader in the room? There are four practical status cues you can use immediately. So, first, you start with a clear sentence, not an apology, not a justification. Sentences like, here is what I want to highlight. There is one point that needs clarity. Second, use calm authority. A steady tone communicates confidence more effectively than volume ever will. Third, hold stillness for 1 second before speaking. Stillness is a powerful signal. When you look centered, people instinctively pay attention. Four, end your sentences with a clean downward tone. This closes your idea with confidence and reduces interruptions. These are subtle shifts, but they change how the room receives you. The people perceive your message as intentional, as relevant, and worth following. And you don't need a title for that. You only need clarity and presence in your first seconds. When you do that, interruptions decrease. People pause and listen to you, and your message has room to land. And the third reason people tune out happens in the very first seconds of an interaction, the primacy effect. And the primacy effect is that the brain decides very quickly whether something deserves attention or not. Not because people are impatient, but because attention is limited. So your opening line matters far more than we think. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Most people begin speaking the moment they're giving the floor. So what they do is that they rush. They start mid-thought. They start with fillers of vagueness instead of clarity. Very common openings sound like this. So a lot has been happening lately. I have a few things, but I'm not sure where to start. There is a lot to unpack here. Let me give you a bit of a background. Now, none of these sentences are wrong. They simply do not anchor attention. You are not saying anything. They do not tell the brain this matters right now. For example, the phrase, let me just give a bit of a background, is perfectly fine later in a conversation, especially when people need context, but not at the beginning in your first line when you're about to speak. It only becomes a weak opener when it is the first thing you say. Because the primacy effect needs clarity, not explanation. You can absolutely give background, just not before you have framed that the conversation is about. Now, listen to the difference when you open with intention. Let me start with the point that will shape today's decision. There are two things we need to align on. Here is the most relevant update for where we stand today. I want to begin with the part that actually moves us forward. These openings send a very specific signal to the brain. This is relevant. Stay here. And this is the heart of the primacy effect. When you open clearly, people follow you. When you open vaguely, people drift. And this is not being dramatic or forceful. It is about giving the brain a reason to pay attention early, simple, intentionally. When you do that, the room shifts. People pause, and your message has a much better chance, opportunity of landing. Now, let us talk about the 5 techniques to help people listen. Understanding the primacy effect gives you something important. So in this case, the awareness, it gives us the awareness that the brain makes fast decisions about what and when it needs attention. But awareness alone is not enough. Knowing how the brain works does not automatically change how people listen to you, but it explains you the reality of communication. What truly matters is the techniques. What do you do with the awareness? And here is why techniques play a role. A technique is the practical way you choose to use that reality in your favor. And that is where the anchor sentence comes in. If the privacy effect tells us that the first seconds matter, the anchor sentence is the tool that helps you shape those seconds with intention. Now, now that we understand how attention works and that we can influence it, not control it, let us go into the practical part. So these techniques that I'm talking to you about, you can use them almost in any situations, at negotiations, in school meetings, even in everyday conversations. So which is the first technique? As I said in the beginning of this conversation, the first one is the anchor sentence. So one of the strongest ways to make people listen to is to anchor the conversation in the first seconds, literally. An anchor sentence tells the brain, this is going somewhere. Stay here. And the structure of an anchor sentence is very simple. Verb, concrete situation, and why it matters. For example, let me clarify one key point before we continue. Here is what will change the outcome of today. Before we move on, I want to bring clarity to something important. And now here's the opposite. A sentence that makes attention disappear. So let me see, where should I start? Your goal is not, here it's to give direction. And when you give direction, then the room follows you. Now, which is the second technique? The second technique is the 40-40-20 rule of voice. So your voice is not volume, your voice is presence. And presence comes from a combination of factors. Presence comes from how your voice lands, not how loud it is. The 40-40-20 rule helps you create a voice that people naturally pay attention to. It is not a performance rule. It is a grounding rule. And here is what it means. So 40% calm confidence. Your bass tone. This is the foundation of your voice. It is the part that says, I am centered. I know what I am saying. It does not rush. It does not shake. It does not push. It communicates stability, even in moments of tension. 40% clarity, clean pronunciation, steady pace. Clarity is not speaking slowly, it is speaking intentionally. Clean articulation, one idea per second, a pace where the listener can follow your thinking. People do not listen when they need to work too hard to decode your message. 20% now emotional texture. This is very important. Warmth, humanity, energy. This is the part that keeps you from sounding robotic. A light smile in the voice, a bit of warmth, a touch of energy when it matters. Not dramatic, just human. Together, these three elements create a voice that feels centered and trustworthy, a voice that brings people towards you instead of pushing them away. Let me give you a real example. Imagine someone says with frustration, I already said this 3 times. No one is listening. The tone rises, the energy spikes, the room closes. Now, listen to the same idea with the 40-40-20 balance. Let me repeat this once clearly so we can all move forward. The message is the same, but the tone shifts everything. The first version invites resistance. The second invites attention. And yes, there will always be leaders who raise their voice, who speak from urgency, or who try to force attention through pressure. But urgency does not create clarity, and volume does not create influence. When someone in the room escalates, your grounded tone becomes even more important. A calm, clear voice does not ignore urgency, it organizes it. And the person who organizes urgency becomes the emotional reference point of the room. People follow the voice that brings stability, not the voice that brings noise. A centered tone is not softness, it is leadership without shouting. Now, let us go to the third technique. The command the space triangle. The third technique is about something we do not always talk about, but everyone feels how your presence can shape the room. Commanding a room has nothing to do with taking up physical space. It has everything to do with how intentional you are with your presence. There are three elements that shape how a room receives you. These three elements come from very well established communication principles. And after studying, they appear in leadership training, negotiation theories, public speaking, and nonverbal communication research. After studying them, I bring them together into what I call the command space triangle, because it is a simple way to understand presence, not as something dramatic or loud, but as something intentional. The first one is stillness, the signal of authority. Most people move unconsciously when they feel nervous. They shift their weight, touch their hair, adjust papers, or fidget without noticing. But a brief moment of stillness, even 1 or 2 seconds before you begin speaking, communicates something very powerful. Pay attention. Something intentional is about to happen. Stillness is not stiffness, it is grounding. It gives you first sentence weight. And in diplomatic spaces, classrooms, or boardrooms, that moment often changes the entire temperature of the room. The second one is eye focus, the anchor of connection. Eye contact is not just scanning the room. When you look at each person for half a second, your presence never lands. It becomes visual noise. Instead, look at one person long enough to finish a full sentence, a full thought, then move to someone else. and then do the same. Even in large groups, the human brain listens better when it feels like you are speaking to someone, not to everyone at once. I focus is not dominance, it is clarity, and people follow clarity. The third one is gesture minimalism. Movement with meaning. We often use our hands to release nervous energy. I use my hands a lot. The movement becomes quick, repetitive, disconnected from the message. When gestures do not match intention, the brain tunes out. One deliberate gesture aligned with a key idea is more powerful than five random movements. Use your hands to underline meaning, not to fill the space. Like punctuation, not like decoration. What happens when you combine all three elements? Stillness grounds you, eye focus connects you, minimal gestures clarify you. And together they create a presence that feels stable, centered, and deliberate. And people naturally listen to the presence that feels grounded. The next technique is the listener loop. Attention is not infinite. Even the most mature, intelligent listeners, they drift, especially in fast environments or in conversations that carry emotional weight. The listener loop is a simple structure that helps you bring people back into the conversation every 20 to 30 seconds without sounding repetitive or controlling. The structure is intentional. You have the signal, you deliver, you pause, you check in. Let me break it down. Signal. A signal tells the brain, pay attention, this part matters. It creates a micro focus moment. Example. Here is the key point. This part is important for the next step. Let me highlight something clearly. A signal is not drama, it is direction. Second, deliver. This is the message itself. One idea, clean, simple. Not three ideas tied together. One idea. When delivery is focused, the brain knows what to hold on to. Third, pause. Again, pause is not silence and it's not stiffness. It is processing time. When you pause, you give your message space to land. You allow the listener to catch up, reflect, and absorb. Pauses are leadership. Rushing is not. Fourth one, check in. A check in brings the listener back into the loop. It is a moment of connection rather than a test. And it does not always have to be verbal. That is where people misunderstand this technique. So here are different ways to check in. We have the verbal check ins. So, for example, does this make sense so far? Are we on the same page? Is this clear before I continue? Now, the collaborative check ins. Let me know if you want me to slow down here. Tell me if you would like more detail on this part. Non-verbal check-ins, a soft nod, a moment of eye focus, a slight lean forward. In diplomatic or negotiation spaces, these non-verbal check-ins are especially powerful because they show openness without interrupting the flow. Why these techniques matters? The listener loop keeps the conversation alive. It balances clarity with collaboration. It prevents the other person from feeling overwhelmed or lost, and it helps you read the room without losing your message. In environments, again, like diplomacy, governance, or high pressure meetings, this structure is gold because it creates shared understanding without forcing compliance. People stay with you, not because you push for attention, but because you guide it. Now, we're going to go to the five and last technique, the boundary line. There will be moments when someone interrupts you, talks over you, or tries to take the floor before you have finished. This does not mean you need to compete for volume or fight for space. It means you need to set a boundary with clarity and calm authority. A boundary line is a short, intentional sentence that protects your message without sounding defensive or confrontational. The structure is simple: acknowledge, hold the floor, continue. Let me show you how this works in real spaces. Acknowledge. Acknowledge is not about agreeing. It is about signaling awareness. For example, I hear you. Yes, I see your point. I will address that. Acknowledgement keeps the interaction human and avoids unnecessary tension. Second, hold the floor. This is the actual boundary. It is warm, firm, and clean. Examples. Let me finish this thought. Give me 10 seconds to complete this. Allow me to close this idea. One moment. Let me land this point. Notice something important. You're not asking for permission. No. You are marking the space that your message deserves. You're not apologizing. Third, continue. Do not pause. Do not shrink. Do not apologize. You simply return to your point and finish it with intention. This shows the room that you're steady, grounded, and respectful, and that you value clarity more than interruptions. Examples that work in high pressure environments without a boundary. Person. So the person says, yes, but that is not what I meant. You stop talking, you get interrupted, you lose the thread. This is going to invite for more interruptions. Now, when there is a boundary line, then the person says, yes, but that is not what I meant. Then you say, I hear you. Let me finish this thought, and then I will come back to your point. And then you continue speaking without hesitation. This resets the dynamics instantly. Why the boundary line matters? Interruptions are often non-personal. Sometimes they're cultural, they come from urgency, they come from power dynamics. Sometimes they are simply habits. And a boundary line does not attack the person. It protects the clarity of the conversation. It allows you to stay grounded. It models respectful leadership. And it helps the room structure, not noise. People listen more when communication feels guided, not when it feels reactive. A boundary line is not aggression, it is direction with respect. But let me say something very important. Even with techniques, there are days where people don't listen, where the context dominates, where emotions change the entire dynamic. That's how human interactions works, and everyone in a professional environment has lived this. My diplomatic background has taught me that nuance matters. Rooms are complex. Power dynamics shift. Politics, hierarchy, and timing can influence how a message lands. So I would never tell you that the five concepts and techniques are enough to master communication. That's not real. And it doesn't match the world we live in. What you're learning here is awareness, not magic. These ideas don't give you full control. They give you a clearer understanding of what happens in people's minds when you speak. And with that understanding, you can make choices that increase the opportunities of being heard. You can influence attention, but you cannot control it completely. If you want to go deeper into these techniques, the voice work, the presence work, the boundary lines, and everything that helps you speak with more intention and less tension, I created a small practical toolkit, the Listenability Toolkit, that expands on everything we talk about today. It includes guided exercise, scripts, real life scenarios, and a few techniques that I could not include here. You will find a link in the description below and in the pinned comment. If this episode resonated with you, I think you will find the toolkit very, very helpful. Thank you for spending time with me. This is the Warm Talks. I'm Angie, and I will see you in our next episode. Bye.